Order, pledge of allegiance, and appreciate our board secretary Holly, if you would lead us.
Please rise and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Thank you much. If we could have the roll call, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Division 7, Gary Van Dam.
Here.
Division 6, Audrey Miller.
Here.
Division 5, Robert Paris.
Here.
Division 2, Keith Dias. Division 1, Drew Mercy.
He's on his way.
Yes, it'll be a couple minutes. Division 3, Frank Donato.
Here.
Division 4, George Lane.
Here.
General Manager Knutson.
Here.
General Counsel Tilden Kim.
Here.
And Holly Hughes present.
Yeah, thank you. Item number 4, voluntary public roll call. All those people that may be listening in electronically, we would like to hear from them. And if you don't mind introducing yourself, we appreciate hearing it from you.
Hi, George. This is John Joyce calling in from Acton Agudilsey News, George.
Welcome.
John, you can say that about United Water Brands.
Welcome, John.
Thank you.
Debbie Dino, Kids Feeding Kids through Agriculture.
Welcome, thank you.
Vincent Dino, Palmdale Water District.
Welcome, thank you.
Vicki Roush, Antelope Valley Resource Conservation District.
Glad you're with us, thank you. Okay, that'll bring us up to item number 5, public comments, period open to the public. If there's any item that's not later on the agenda, feel free to address the board at this time. If not, we'll move on to item number 6, adoption of agenda.
I'll make a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and second by Directors Dias and Director Paris. If there's no further comments, all in favor? Oh, we're going to have to roll call.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Drew Mercy. Frank Donato.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Moves item number 7, consent calendar. And basically we just have one item on that, 7A1, approve the minutes in July 25th. So a motion would be in order.
Mr. President, I move approval of the consent calendar item 7A1.
Director Paris, Director Donato. If there's no further discussion, we'll have a roll call.
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Drew Mercy.
Yes.
Frank Donato.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. We're moving right along pretty fast here. That'll bring us to item number 8. We have a few items in our finance committee, and our chairman of that is Frank Donato. Frank, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Okay, one item 8A1, consider impossible action to accept and file the check registry list for the period of August 10th through the 30th of 2023. That's in your agenda.
And all directors had a chance to review that. If there's no questions on that,
Okay, I move that we approve item 8A1.
Director Donato, we have a motion.
I'll second.
There's a second right there. There's no further questions. All in favor, Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam.
Yes.
Audrey Miller.
Yes.
Robert Paris.
Yes.
Keith Dias.
Yes.
Drew Mercy.
Yes.
Frank Donato.
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried.
Okay, this brings us to 8A2. This is consideration of possible action on the High Desert Water Bank, fiscal year 2023-24, OM and R, and management budgets that will be presented by our General Manager, Mr. Newsom.
All right. Thank you, Director Donato. Good evening, Board. Maybe before we get into the presentation on the proposed operation and maintenance budget, for the High Desert Water Bank. I wanted to share some good news regarding the High Desert Water Bank. This afternoon, the Metropolitan Water District Board met to discuss the increased capital costs associated with the High Desert Water Bank, and they approved overwhelmingly the additional $80 million in capital costs associated with the program. So a lot of
Good news.
good things were said about the program, the partnership between AVAC and Metropolitan Water District, both at their committee meeting that was held yesterday and the board meeting today. So that's great news for the agency and for the project and for the partners. So wanted to share that with you. And then the item before us today is consideration possible action on the 2023-2024 operation maintenance and replacement, as well as the management budget for the High Desert Water Bank. So I've got a few slides to go through today. We discussed this with the finance committee last week, and they asked some good questions, and here to share it with the full board today. So first slide is a couple of paragraphs pulled out of our 2019 agreement between AVAC and Metropolitan Water District for the construction and as well as the operation of the High Desert Water Bank. So the first paragraph out of the agreement just talks about, defines what is OM&R and management costs. So it's basically any reoccurring ongoing activity or costs that the agency incurs, AVAC incurs, as part of managing the project, the operation of the project, and Metropolitan is responsible for reimbursement of those costs to AVAC. So this includes things like staff time, equipment costs, materials that we have to purchase for maintaining the project, as well as future replacement of some of the major equipment, such as the recovery wells, any work associated with the pipelines, pump stations, and treatment facility in the future. So second paragraph talks a little bit about that. The process is AVAC comes up with an estimate of what those costs are going to be for the next 12 months. Metropolitan makes a deposit with AVAC for that amount. We work off of those deposits to cover our costs. And at the end of the first year, there's a true up period, and any surplus money rolls over to the balance for the next year. Any deficits need to be paid by Metropolitan. So that covers those two paragraphs. There's also a term in the agreement that says if AVAC or another party that AVAC allows to utilize second or third priority capacity of the bank, either AVAC or that third party needs to share in the operation and maintenance costs. So, for example, if there's a particular year that Metropolitan does not want to use their first priority capacity, either for recharge or recovery, AVAC has second priority use of that capacity, or if we allowed a third party to utilize that capacity for storage or recovery of imported water supplies, then we would share proportionately on that year's operation and maintenance costs for the project. So there's a little example there. If the annual cost is $1 million and AVAC or a third party utilizes 25%, we would be responsible for $250,000 of that. The remaining would be responsibility of Metropolitan Water District. So this is a snippet out of our approved organizational structure. And for the last couple of years, we've shown what we anticipate the staffing levels needed for the operation of the High Desert Water Bank. And those positions are shown in blue there. We envision one additional lead operator assigned to the High Desert Water Bank, 2 additional water bank operators, and then 1 additional maintenance staff or maintenance technician. So this is long-term when the project's fully operational, when we have all the recovery wells operational, as well as the treatment facility. This first fiscal year, because we only have a recharge operation available to Metropolitan, we're only seeking approval to fund that one additional lead operator position for the upcoming or for the current fiscal year. The other positions that I mentioned, that are shown there in blue, those are deferred until a future date. So some of the assumptions that went into the OM&R budget is this is very consistent with the 2019 agreement between Avek and Metropolitan Water District. It covers the period from today through June 30th. So right at 80% of the current fiscal year. And why we picked September 12th is because that's Metropolitan wanted to get through their board meeting today before they start recharging their imported water supplies. So we anticipate next couple of days to start recharging their water through the end of the current fiscal year. On the personnel assumptions, I mentioned this, one new full-time lead operator that would be assigned to the High Desert Water Bank for operation of the valving, the new turnout, and maintenance activities associated with the project. And then that we're also assuming 25% of one of the existing Westside Water Bank operators' time. So this would be covering weekends, the period that the lead operator is off work, backfilling any vacation time, etc. And then we're assuming about 15% of the Westside Water Bank supervisor's time will be associated with oversight of the project. And there, down below, you can see the table that breaks down the personnel expenses associated with those three individuals. Down at the bottom, the overall budget allocates funding for staffing that we just talked about, any equipment costs, assuming we need to rent equipment for maintaining the weeds, roads, or basins, any utility costs associated with the new turnout and turn-in facility, primarily power. And then in the agreement, it talks about administrative costs. So we're assuming 5% of AVAC's annual general and administrative expenses. So based on those assumptions, you can see the simple budget we put together. We're estimating on the revenue side, initial deposit from Metropolitan Water District for OM&R at $550,000 to take us through June 30th, 2024. We're assuming a small amount of interest accrued on that account. Down below, you can see the expenses that we just went through, $200,000 to cover 80% of the personnel expenses because we're only talking about 80% of the fiscal year. $217,000 for that 5% of AVAC's G&A expenses. And this covers things like admin staff's oversight, invoicing Metropolitan, tracking costs, general liability insurance, etc. $20,000 for
is that 20,000? That's 5%. Of which number? Of what number?
It's 217,000.
Yeah, it's
is 5% of AVAC's budgeted general and administrative expense for the current fiscal year. Next line item is transportation and communication. This is the lead operator's vehicle, fuel costs, cell phone, etc. $10,000 for power costs associated with the new turnout, turn-in facility. And then we're anticipating or planning if we need to rent any equipment for maintain the roads, weeds, basins, etc. $50,000, and then miscellaneous tools at $5,000. So it comes based on those assumptions, just over $500,000. If all this holds true based on the deposit that we're requesting, we'll have about $50,000 surplus at the end of the fiscal year.
And they'll get credit for that the next year.
Correct. That $52,000 would roll over as a deposit, basically, for the next fiscal year.
And there's no board order asked for this. This is
Yeah,
next time.
we do have a board order to actually approve the fiscal year 23-24 OM&R budget for the High Desert Water Bank.
Can you make a recommendation? We should.
I am, as well as the finance committee is.
Okay, I move on board order 882.
Okay, we have a motion. Is there a second?
Second, Mercy.
Okay. Is there any further discussion? Not all in favor, again, Madam Secretary, roll call.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried.
That
Thank
concludes
you.
my finance.
Yeah, very good report, very thorough.
Thank you.
Okay, that'll move us on to the next item, customer relations, public information. And Director,
No,
oh, excuse me.
I did.
Yeah, this is again, Frank,
Okay.
High Desert Water Bank Resource Committee.
Okay, that brings us to HB1, and this is our monthly update on the High Desert Water Bank project, and our engineer, Justin Livesey, will go ahead and give us an overview.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, President Lane and members of the board. Typical monthly update, a little bit happier thoughts, I guess, today after the news that Matt mentioned, so that's good. We also have today, just to introduce right off the bat, in person, Tian Ing, construction manager that you've heard from many times over the phone, as well as Earl Schwartz, who's our resident engineer out at the project site. So Earl's here in support, but Tian will give the construction side of this update. So this one's a little bit different. We thought it would be helpful. We went through this with the committee, but thought it would be helpful to kind of refresh everybody's memory on some of the key objectives of the project and some of the key agreement principles. It's been a while since we've talked about these details, so we thought it might be helpful just as a refresher. We always go through the project objectives, so that's probably not any news to anybody, but the recharge and recovery capacity of 70,000 acre feet per year for the project, and a storage target of 280,000 acre feet in total. And of course, we have the 10% leave behind as well. The second section here, which is new, is the key agreement principles. So this outlines kind of the key terms of our agreement with Metropolitan Water District that kind of kicked this whole project off. The agreement term is through 2037 with an option to extend for an additional 20 years. Metropolitan Water District agrees to pay all of the capital costs for the construction of the project, which is the reason they went to their board today to authorize the additional $80 million for the capital side of the project. They also agree, as Matt just went through, to pay all the operation, maintenance, replacement, and management costs for the project. Avek agrees to own and operate the project. So the project is our project that they're funding, and we will have first priority rights, ownership, all of that after the term of the agreement. In return, Metropolitan receives first priority rights to all of the banking capacity through the agreement term, as well as the recovery capacity. And as Matt talked about also during the O&M discussion, Avek has that second priority right to banking and recovery capacity in the project as well. And then on the financial side, Avek receives $100 per acre foot of water recovered and returned to the State Water Project for Metropolitan Water District. And that $100 per acre foot is escalated annually with CPI. Starting in 2019 when the agreement was signed. That amount is currently about $117 per acre foot. Any questions on the key terms of that agreement? Hopefully that was a helpful reminder. Getting into the project now itself, we've got a new map here updated on the right-hand side. Hopefully it's a little bit cleaner than the versions that we've seen in the past. We're trying to update this in real time for you all. But we do have short-term goals listed here on the left, items that we hope to accomplish in the next 3 months. We're getting very close to closing out the aqueduct turnout contract. All of the work on site is completed. I think they've got one punch list item remaining, which Tian will talk about that progress. Nicholas Construction is continuing work on the recharge basins and pipelines. They're actually making very swift progress, so We're hoping they continue to do so. We might be able to close that contract out a little bit early, but we'll knock on wood. If there's an amendment to the agreement that based on Metropolitan's authorization of the additional funds, we would need to execute that with them. We have a item that has been talked with the committee, but should be coming before the board at our next board meeting to execute the storage agreement for with the water master for the project. So that should be coming here in pretty short order. And then item 5, we can cross that one off the list, but begin recharge in the stage 1 recharge area. Some of you may know, but we've been recharging in the High Desert Water Bank for about 2.5 weeks or so by now. So everything is going really well there, and Tim's got some great photos to share when we get into the construction update side. As far as the map goes, I'll go quickly through this because although it is a new map, not too much has really changed. But this is the stage 1. My mouse is kind of funny, but the lower area here, this is our stage 1 recharge area. This is basin 6 that the cursor's at now. We're recharging in that basin, as well as basin 4, which is here. So you'll see on the future pictures that those 2 basins are filled up. We've got the turnout structure is located right there along the aqueduct. And then the green pipeline is the recharge and recovery pipelines that have been installed to date. And then the orange pipelines up towards the top area is the recharge and recovery pipelines that are remaining to be installed by Nicholas Construction. The stage 2 recharge area is the area here to the north. They are getting very close to completing that. Mostly all of the rough and fine grading is complete. They're working on installing ag base and not to steal Tien's thunder here. Sorry about that. But that's all going well. And then the dots on the screen, which may be difficult to see, indicate the locations of the recovery wells. Blue dots indicate that those have already been drilled. And then the orange, I think those are orange dots, indicate future wells. Then the dotted lines that kind of connect those are the pipelines that will recover the water from the wells and bring it back to the main arteries to return to the aqueduct, ranch-owned land as well.
Have we had a chance to measure the percolation per day?
Yeah, we've done some rough calculations in-house, and right now it's looking like just under a foot per day. Yeah, so doing pretty good to start. Section 2 is our program management team activity. You can see all the players so far in the project across the top there. Program management activity, pretty much the same as in previous meetings. Kennedy Jenks does a good job of tracking the overall project progress, participating in meetings, working with our design consultants to target completion dates for different deliverables and holding them to those dates. And then as I mentioned, I think in the last update, they provided comments on the 30% design package. We had a meeting regarding that yesterday to kind of answer some questions for them for clarity. Upcoming board decisions, we talked about 2 of these items, I guess, the storage agreement and the amendment with Metropolitan. Once we close out the contract with the turnout contractor, we come back for notice of completion to the committee and board at that time. So maybe in the next couple of months, we'll be at that step. Engineering and field work, this is Stantec and their team. Not too much has changed here. They're continuing to work with the contractors as they progress construction. They're working on updating the groundwater model with the new data received from the 6 wells that were drilled in the second drilling package. They've got probably another couple months of work on that. And then, as I mentioned, we had a call yesterday to talk about comments that we provided on the 30% design package for the well equipping and recovery design. So Stantec's working on addressing those. They're going to advance that design to 90% and submit that back to us. So we've got a few more months worth of design work before we get to that stage. Getting into contracts, you've seen this table before. Really, the only thing I guess to point out here, kind of take-home messages or the percentages that you can see on the side. You can see we're doing pretty good on budget overall. Construction management, we're about 48%-ish of what we've authorized so far, which is probably closer to 25% of what we think our total CM budget will be. But all of the contractors are doing well. You can see the 2 construction ones here. The turnout contractor, we just got a pay invoice from them for their work in August, so that number will go up next month. Same with the recharge contractors. So everything's tracking really well at this point in time. This just breaks down the payments over time from the capital program account funded by Metropolitan. You can see that in August, we made about $4.5 million worth of payments out of that account. Most of that, pretty much all of that, is for the construction of the project. We've got about 1.8 million left in the account right now. I mentioned we did just get some progress payments, but we have a deposit from Metropolitan of about 3.2 million. That's due in a couple of days. So that should come in. We'll get our checks out to our contractors, and that process has been working really well for us. I think that brings us into construction, so I'll let Tien take it from here.
Yeah, very thorough, Justin. That was good.
Thank you. Yeah, this will move your mouse, and then this will click. That one will go.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, directors, general manager. Thank you, Justin. Nice to see you all in person, finally. For this month, we have two construction projects to update. The first one is the Aqueduct Turnout Turn-In project. This project, from the few physical work, is essentially done. I have an item here showing substantially completed, but it was resolved this morning. So now our focus is turning on getting the paperwork, which is the red line record drawings. We met with the contractor this morning. They say by Friday, they will submit that set of record drawings for us to review and then subsequently turn over to Avek. We're meeting twice a week on change order packages. So far, they have submitted quite a bit of change order. We've been able to provide comments, feedback to them, something for them to think about. So we're continuing that process. We're estimating that we'll probably still need a couple more weeks before all the change order negotiated and then sit down with Justin and his team and to present and to get approval. Once that's done, we will be coming to the committee and the board for review and approval, and subsequently the board will issue the notice of completion after that.
Why so many change orders? It sounds like there's quite a few.
Couple meetings ago, I presented that the contractor requested that they would like to meet with us. A lot of the change order that in their mind they think is a change of contract or change of conditions, and they want to sit down with us to hear them out, and that's what we're doing. So on this slide here on the photos, this is the day of the.
Now, is that?
Oh, sorry.
Do you agree with that?
So far, not really, but we do have to hear about it. Yeah. So.
Well, wait. George asked a good question. You're saying so far, I have to wait. I mean, what explain that.
It basically is, for example, they'll come up with a certain line of work. They say, this cost me this much, but I think certain things change. You guys make some decisions out in the field, and this change, and therefore it's a change. So we will review that once they submit it, sit down with them to frankly go through it with them. We don't see it that way. Let me prove it to you to show it on the contract documents why we don't think it's a change.
Well, they're all looking for more money.
Could be, yeah.
I mean, that's, what it comes down to.
Right.
Let's see if we're fishing right now, we're going to, hit the bait. I mean, basically, things don't change that much in 6 months.
Right.
But you did mention you're going to go over those with Justin in for approval and send them to the committee and the board. So we don't know they're going to be approved yet.
That is correct. Yeah. So for the photo here that's shown on the screen here, that was the first day of recharge, and that's on August 28th. This is a photo of the contractor removing the stop block. The stop block position is just before the slide gate. Typically you use stop block if you wanted to do maintenance downstream of the facility, such as the slide gate in the future. In a normal operations, you would remove them and put them in the location when you need to isolate some facilities area that you would use them.
No, what was,
sorry.
one question, go back to that. Wasn't this the one that we were able to change it to one solid piece instead of having two pieces?
Justin, can you say more?
Yeah.
I think that's
Yes.
it, right?
Yeah, good memory, Director Donato. Yeah, this is one we're waiting on some guidance from DWR. They were asking for some modifications to this stop log. So here it's currently in two pieces as the contractor pulled it out, but DWR requested that it get extended a little bit taller, something that they didn't anticipate, I guess, or didn't catch when they initially reviewed the design for this. And then they want to add a piece in the middle to raise it, make it taller, and then weld that whole thing together so it's one big piece to come out. They had some concerns with in the future if they need to pull those stop logs, if they can pull it in, in two pieces, being that the lower piece would be underwater. So yeah, so there's going to need to be some more work to do on that. Avek committed to doing that work outside of the scope of the contractor's contract, so that we could expedite closing out and being able to utilize the turnout structure prior to closing out the contractor.
On the long run, isn't it better to have one solid piece than have two different pieces?
I mean, these don't get used a whole lot. It's going to be probably more difficult to move around, but you don't have any issues with any leaking in between any joints or anything like that. So in that sense, it'll be better. Yeah.
Thank you, Justin. The following photo is at the aqueduct turnout turn-in structure. I believe it's an AVAC electrician on the functional test day working on the panel for the traveling screens. This is the first day of recharge on August 28th. The photo on your left is week 1, day 1. And you see here, this is basin number 6, and that's turnout number 1. The water started coming in from the aqueduct through the pipe to the basin. And this is basin number 4, what Justin showed from his map. So this basin, stage 1 basins, in total has 6 basins. Basin 6, basin 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1 small one at the very end. This is the end. 28 being a Monday, September 1st is a Friday. So 5 days later, you can very visibly show that, it looks like basin 6 is almost full and basin 4 still have a long way to go. So let's advance to the next slide to see what week 2 look like. So this is September 6th, just after the holiday. You can see basin number 6. It still looks like it's full, but not overflowing to basin 5. And this is basin 4. Look like there's still water, a lot of water in there, but not ready to overflow yet. And then, a few days later, by day 12, it still looks the same. So that means that a lot of the water coming in to the basin are going into the ground. So as of right now, that picture on your right, if you go out there, it still looks pretty much the same. The second project, stage 1, stage 2 recharge system, the contract completion for this project is July 26th of next year, 2024. So the contractor has completed stage 1 pipeline, the stage 1 basins work. Now they're focusing on the second stage, which is the pipeline, and also their number of basins needs to be built, but they're almost there. So here's a photo of Avenue A8. So this photo is recent from last week. They're starting to build that pipeline. And I believe they have laid out all the pipeline as of right now, and they're getting ready to backfill that stretch of pipeline. And here's an elevated view of Basin 20, which is See a cursor here. This is basin 20, and that's basin 21. Those are the furthest north basin here. So the contractor is very close in getting to the right elevation and doing all the spillway outfall. Now they can concentrate on the remaining of the basin, which is located further south. So, Justin, that concludes my monthly update.
Thanks, Ken. Any questions for Ken?
How's it percolating?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Huh?
It's doing really good.
It is?
Yeah, as Tim mentioned, that last picture, it's holding there. So there's a stick and it's measuring how much it's going up. It's remained steady over the last several days. It's not rising at all. So all the water we're putting in there is percolating. It's about a foot a day. Yeah,
Good.
It's doing pretty good. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Tim. That about wraps us up. Section 8, we kind of reserve for other items. We don't have much. Matt gave the good news already. And Section 9, board action items, nothing for tonight. So that concludes the report. Be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Hey, Justin, thank you. Is there any questions from the board? Yeah?
No, good job. All right.
Okay, thank you much.
Thank you.
Then we'll move on to item. We'll move on to item 8, C1 Customer Relations, Public Information, and Director Dias, the chairman of that committee.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The Customer Relations and Public Information Committee met last Wednesday, September 6th, and discussed several items, and I believe I'll let Matt make the report.
All right. Thank you, Director Dias. So I'd love to make the report, but Pete came out my office a couple hours ago and said, pick me. He wanted to present on these next two items, so I let him do it. So take it away, Pete.
Thanks, Matt. That's pretty much exactly how it happened. All right. Well, good evening, Mr. President, directors. So as Director Dias mentioned, the Public Information Committee met on September 6th. And one of the items they took on was that Aqua had requested that Avek put in a vote for their upcoming board elections. The presidential seat only had one uncontested seat, and that was for Kathy Green. But there was two candidates for the vice president seat, and the committee felt it would be good to bring them in and have them both talk about their backgrounds, their key points of focus, and both of them took that invitation seriously, showed up, and so we had Ernesto Avila and Michael Sanders both came in and talked, and the committee hit them up with questions. And at the end of it, the committee recommended a slate of Kathy Green for president and Michael Saunders for the vice president seat. And happy to answer any questions or turn it back over to the committee for further comments.
This was done by telephone. They didn't physically come in.
That's correct.
In one of the items, when we had the option to vote for the different officers, it had from the association, it had preferred candidate, and the committee was a little concerned about that. It really gave an undue advantage to both candidates running. And we've just never, I don't think anybody on the committee had ever seen that where they'd already made a selection. But the two candidates, vice president, the committee agreed 100% on the one that's recommended.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion to approve Board Order 8C1 in voting in favor of Kathy Green for president, Michael Saunders for vice president for Aqua.
Okay, we have a motion by Director Dias. Second, Mercy. Okay, second, Director Mercy. If there's no further discussion, all in favor of Board Order 8C1, Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller, Yes. Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Okay, that brings us to,
What about this other thing?
that brings us to 8C2, consideration of possible action of financial support, the Kids Feeding Kids program. And again, that'll be Director Dias.
Yes, thank you. Will Peter be making this improvement?
Yes, I asked for this one too. So, all right. Well, good evening again. The other matter that came before the Customer Relations Public Information Committee was a request from Debbie Dino for financial support from Avek for the Kids Feeding Kids Through Agriculture program. It's a local nonprofit. Debbie came in and gave a presentation on the program. Debbie's here tonight on the phone, and she will probably do a much better job explaining the program than I will. So I'll go ahead and turn that over to her. Debbie, are you on?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much, Peter. I appreciate that. I am so honored to even be considered for a monetary donation from AVAC. A little background on us. We started out in 2019 as just kind of a really fast thrown together project. That first year we were able to get 23 hogs, and our mission always has been to feed first off families with school-age children, secondly our seniors, and secondly our veterans. And we have superseded any expectations we have ever had. We now are actually kids feeding kids through agriculture because we have brought in kids and we are mentoring kids, and we have our mentors, which are our ag kids already. So we've got kids that are all pretty much the same age mentoring kids that didn't know a doggone thing about animals. And I'm proud to say that this year with the fair, with the buybacks that we received, and with us purchasing our own animals being raised, we had 44 hogs this year, the most we've ever had. So we're going to be able to feed this community for a nice period of time. We have we've contracted with the Boys and Girls Club. They provide the kids as the mentees, and it is working out great. We're hoping that for future that we will get some of these kids so interested in getting into agriculture, getting into raising an animal for the fair, and keeping the program alive and keeping agriculture alive in this community, which it's known for. So thank you very much for the consideration.
I have some questions.
Yeah.
Sure. Where are these kids, when you do the instruction, coaching, whatever, where's this done at? Is it schools
That's a
here?
good question. We are working diligently with the high schools. We absolutely want that program back in, and we are being pretty successful in that. We have two steers being raised over at AV High School right now. Those were donated to us, and the kids are raising those. As far as the other, we have had Rosemont High School last year. They had hogs over there, and we had Little Rock High School that had hogs and had kids teach. And along with that, we have our individual families that have stepped up to the plate and we're able to use their facility where the kids are coming to their homes and learning how to raise an animal.
So how many, don't we have like 4 ag high schools up here, at least 4? How many do we have?
Well, we lost Court Hill, did we, Debbie?
Yes, we did. So we have actually Rosemont, Little Rock, AV High School, and Palmdale. And Palmdale's not anywhere near ready to be taking on animals. The other 3, they are working on it. Again, as I said, we're working with the high school district, with the board of directors there, who I have to be so thankful because they are so behind our program and getting it back up and running and having a really active livestock program through the high schools.
What is it, because it's the lack of funding through the schools, or what is it?
I'm not sure on that part of it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, because this valley is based upon an agricultural area, and I'm 100% support to educate children and young, I guess, or high school children, as well as
And
middle.
you know, to be honest, yeah, to be honest with you, I am not from this valley. I have been up here for 28 years, but when I became a board member on the Antelope Valley Fair Association, I really saw the need, and I would like to absolutely jump in with everything I have to keep the program alive.
I'd add, I think to that point, we had just over right around 300 animals this last auction. 20 years ago, it was around 600.
Oh, I know. I remember it was always.
And I think it's changing demographics. There's more. We're becoming more suburban. I can tell you from my experience in our conversations, and I'd echo what Debbie said about the high school district being very interested in helping get some animal facilities there because there's just fewer families that have animal property.
These kids thought that bacon came from the market. They had no idea, and they were just astounded at what it actually takes to put meat on your table. And so that is what we're really focusing on, is getting these kids educated, getting them into the program, keeping this program alive in the Antelope Valley much farther, much longer than we'll ever be out here. But that's the whole goal completely. And feeding our people here in our valley.
How much does each hog cost to be processed?
It varies. Processing fees go up yearly. Just to purchase a hog right now is about anywhere from $250 to $300. Processing fees, where the majority of that money is in the transportation. Last year, I paid about $8,000 just for transportation, not including the butchering or the kill, which has to be, again, at USDA facilities.
And what about the cost of the feeding?
The cost of the feeding, luckily we get a really good deal on that. But again, it's still about $300 to $500 a pig to feed them out.
Okay, well, thank you. It's probably time for a motion. If there's any more questions after a motion's made, then we can discuss it at that time.
Mr. President, I'll make a motion that we approve Board Order 8C2 for financial support for the feeding kids through agriculture program in the amount of $5,000.
I'll second that.
Motion by Director Dias, second by Director Donato. Is there any further discussion from the board? Madam Secretary, if we could have a roll call vote.
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes. Motion carried. Yeah, thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much for your donation. It's very much appreciated.
The next item, item number 9, General Manager's Report. So, Matt, we'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I'll turn the first part of the GM report over to John Bozigan to give an overview of the repair made to our West Feeder pipeline that we informed the board of a couple months back. So gave a report to the Finance Committee last week and thought it'd be good to give the full board a report. So take it away, John.
Thank you, Matt. Holly, can you pull it up there? There we go. Okay. So, West, that's our Gaskell Road recharge project, if you didn't know we had one. Okay, so we told you a while back that we discovered a big leak on Gaskell Road at about 115th Street West. And that was the West Feeder that feeds the Roseman treatment plant. So we had to isolate that section. We were still able to bank water at the West Side Water Bank. Thankfully, we have a valve that can isolate that. And then we put the North Feeder on the SNP system in the interim when we couldn't run the plant. So this is what happens when a 36-inch diameter pipeline bursts under 100 pounds of pressure. It makes a very big hole. Sent mud and debris all the way down to 100th Street. And Kern County Road Department and Avek staff cleaned up the whole mess, barricaded the area so there was no danger to pedestrians or traffic. And then we did an emergency repair. We looked at contractors. We don't know what's down there, who's going to fix this. WM Lyles is usually our go-to. Their whole company is busy with the high-speed rail. They had nobody available. So we used Sierra Construction to come in and identify what was wrong and make the repair. Okay, so next slide, Holly. Okay, so we dewatered it before the contractor got on site. And you can see this is mortar lined and coated steel pipe. Looks like the mortar on the outside is peeling off, and that's just because of the expansion of the pipe when it burst. Next slide, Holly. That's the bottom of the pipe. I have a coupon of that pipe in my office. It's paper thin. It's supposed to be about 3/8 of an inch thick. And so it was determined that under installation back in 1978, whenever it was, 74, this pipe was obviously damaged. Very rusty inside and out. The mortar was damaged, and then you just have, almost 50 years of rust working at the steel barrel, which should never see moisture with that protective coating and lining. Next slide, Holly. Okay, so Sierra Construction is on site. They're cutting out right now about a 5-foot section of that pipe because we wanted to video this pipe. We wanted to see, look, is this the only bad section or is there more out there? So they cut out a 5-foot section so we can get the video equipment in. We kept that section for posterity. It's out behind the clear well, so we'll figure out what we want to do with it. But we do have it. Next slide, Holly. Okay, so we did video the pipe. They went about 300 feet in one direction. They could only go about 50 to 100 feet in the other direction because there was so much mud in the pipe. But they did determine everything looked good in that section. It was just an aberration. One section of pipe was damaged. Avek has over 200 miles of pipe. The north feeder, if you remember, we had a leak. Similar situation. Pipe was damaged on installation, blew out. We got that repaired last year. So just keep in mind, Avek has 200 miles of pipeline throughout the valley. So this should make you sleep well at night. Hopefully there's no more ticking time bombs out there. So this is them lowering the new section of pipe. They replaced a 40-foot section. Director Lane had a good question with the Finance Committee. If we did miss a bad section of pipe, maybe we should have some extra on hand. We were able to procure one more section of 36-inch pipe. And so we do have that in storage. If we need it in the future, we can do a pretty quick repair. Next slide, Holly. Okay, so how do you connect this pipe? Well, what they do is they drop it in place and they leave a gap between the ends of the pipe and the old and the existing pipe. They use what's called a butt strap. It's a 3/8 inch thick piece of steel that's curved to the outside of the pipe, top and bottom, and then they weld inside and out. And you can see this heat affected zone. That's where a gentleman was inside the pipe making the interior weld, and then they weld the outside. So no moisture can ever get where it shouldn't be. Next slide, Holly. That's a good fillet weld on the outside of the pipe. You can see, obviously, certified welders have to be hired to do this. Next slide, Holly. Okay, well, you got a guy inside the pipe welding. How does he get in and out? Okay, so they put what's called a manway, politically incorrect thing these days, person access way, and they get in and out through there. And then when they're done, we put a big blind flange on that. But it's also useful because, guys in there welding, creating harmful vapor, smoke, fumes, everything. So they're pumping a lot of air into that pipe while they're doing the work. Next slide, Holly. Okay, money shot. Here we go. What does it cost? I'm trying to soften you up. It was discovered in end of June. Sierra Construction, about 10 days later, was on site to do their work. And by the 26th, the job was completed, and we were back in business. Final cost was $176,823.32. It was a time and materials job, which emergency jobs typically are. You don't know what's down there. Justin and the engineer, Joe and Ben, were out there constantly logging hours, seeing what equipment was out there, what manpower was out there. They did an analysis. They called equipment companies. What does this equipment cost to rent for a week or a month? What's the prevailing wage of a laborer or a welder? And believe it or not, they came up with a figure before we got this, that this job, if it's fair and straight up, should be about $179,000. And I mean, I don't know how you thread the needle that well, but credit to Justin and his group for sure. So that is the final cost. No action is really needed. This is for information. You will see it on the next finance and board check register to be paid to CR Construction. So that's all I have for you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John.
John,
Okay.
how often is that 365 a year? That's flowing water, that pipe?
Yeah,
or-
yeah. You see, now it hasn't flowed water under pressure for several years, or 6 or 7 years, because we've been feeding wells from the West Side Water Bank, the ag wells, just gravity to the Roseman plant. So it really hasn't seen pressure. But back before we had the West Side Water Bank, it was constant pressure from from Fairmont. We have to reduce pressure twice before we get to Roseman. So for the last 8 months, it has seen about 100 pounds of pressure.
So would that pipe then not be all the way filled without pressure?
Without pressure, it was never all the way filled. It was just gravity. Wells coming from the West Side Water Bank, just pressure reducing stations were wide open because there was no pressure to reduce.
Right. Is that where the rust issue came from then?
And I think the rust issue came from when a backhoe operator in 1974 was putting it in place. He hit it with a bucket and knocked off the coating and the lining. And then you just have, what's the Neil Young song? Rust never sleeps. And it doesn't. And it took its toll. So.
Well, I want to thank Director Lane for ordering another 40-foot section of pipe. So having some foresight here.
Well,
Hopefully we don't need it.
Hopefully we'll never use it, but we have it if we do. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, John. Good job.
Okay, Matt, we'll go back to you.
All right, just to wrap it up, it's nice having excellent presenters give the GM report for me. So I just have one slide tonight. Some upcoming items. We talked about the Metropolitan Board action earlier today to increase the capital budget. So really good news. We're going to sleep better tonight. I'm going to be out of the office next week for the training that was approved by the board a couple months ago. But you're in good hands with Peter and John, Justin, Teresa, the rest of the management staff. So feel free to reach out to them if you need anything next week. We have the upcoming Water Master Board meeting on the 27th here at Avek at 10 a.m. At the next Avek Board meeting, we'll go through that agenda and make sure we're all on the same page of direction for the Water Master meeting. Our Avek's big item for that meeting will most likely be the storage agreement for the High Desert Water Bank. We're going to talk about that next Avek Board meeting and the Water Master meeting. Avek is hosting a CSDA chapter luncheon here at Avek on October 12th at 11 a.m. So please let Holly know if you plan on attending that. And then also just a reminder, we've scheduled a tour of the Irvine Ranch Water District's Strand Ranch Recharge Project in mid-October on Tuesday, the 17th. So again, let us know. I know several of you have reached out, would like to go on that tour. Just a reminder, this is where we have an agreement with Irvine Ranch Water District to store or bank some surplus AVAC water supplies. So that's all I have for the upcoming meetings. Another note just to add is we continue to bank close to 300 acre feet a day between all our projects. That's between Westside Water Bank. We've been banking last couple of weeks at High Desert Water Bank until Metropolitan does schedules their water. Upper Amargosa, Low Rock Creek. So pretty significant amount that we're banking every day. So that's all I have to report unless you have any questions.
Any questions from General Manager?
Yeah, Hallmark went ahead and decided to go ahead and do the Water Master meeting after all because I thought September was going to be canceled.
Yeah, that Director Van Dam's referring to the Hallmark Group, the Water Master Administrator. One option they had at the last Water Master meeting was to cancel the September meeting in order to save money. But the board, I guess, denied that and chose to keep the scheduled September meeting. So.
Well, I'll make one comment. It's not for the public.
Exactly.
I mean, people need to get a permit to put in a domestic well.
Yeah.
It take 90 days before they can.
Exactly.
That happens.
Yep.
And also it was in their scope of work, in their contract, I believe.
Yeah.
To have all these meetings.
Correct. To have 11 meetings throughout the year. The only month that we don't have a meeting is in November due to Thanksgiving, and we combine the November-December meeting. So 11 meetings per year, and so like I said, the board chose to keep it for the primary reason that Director Donato mentioned. It's not fair to those folks that have pending applications for transfers or new wells to have to wait 2 months.
Definitely good point.
Yeah, if you want to save money, just have the attorney not show up for one meeting.
Careful, Frank.
Out.
So we'll go through that. We'll talk about those items.
You're going to hurt children's feelings. You're on retainer for these meetings anyway.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. There's no further questions. We'll move on to
Thank you.
item number 10, Director's Reports. If there's any Director does report, now's the time. Okay, and number 11, Attorney's Reports.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Number 12, new request for future agenda items. Yeah, we do have need to go
I
into.
do have a request. I think this project with these kids and this, feed the kids and things like that, I think the committee should look deeper in that and see what we can do to help the community here in the Antelope Valley. And I still believe, if it wasn't for the ag, there wouldn't be a presence of AVAC, supporting the state water project. So I think that's something we should further investigate.
Good point. We do need to go into closed session. So probably a motion would be in order to go into closed session.
So moved. Mercy.
Second, Van Dam.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary?
Gary Van Dam,
Yes.
Audrey Miller,
Yes.
Robert Paris,
Yes.
Keith Dias,
Yes.
Drew Mercy,
Yes.
Frank Donato,
Yes.
George Lane.
Yes, motion carried. Let's take a 5-minute break right there.